This is part 3 of the Tamiya Egress rebuild. So I have the front and rear gearboxes all cleaned up and mounted and everything, and the front suspension largely complete. I do have here the carbon fiber chassis and front and rear shock towers from Fiberlight. They're a British company that do remakes of carbon fiber chassis for all kinds of RC cars, and they do have the layout for the Tamiya Egress. So I picked that up. I also finally got shipped in the same parts from Pargu. Okay, so these are alloy upper and lower plates. I ultimately chose to go with the carbon fiber plates because this is what the original Egress came with. There are some minor differences in the upper deck between the Pargu part and the Fiberlight part. So you can see on this end here, there's 3 holes. Here you have 2 sets of 3 holes. I think this is for the battery mount post, the plastic piece that comes up and you clip it in. So I guess if you have a wider battery, you can account for that on this guy. So this is basically like a modified version of the original part. And this is more of an exact replica of the original part that came with the Egress. Also up front here, you can see, let's see, this piece here is just an aluminum post, okay? And that's what holds the front of the battery in. So on the Pargu part, you have 3 holes for that, depending on the length of the battery. So there's more adjustability for the battery here on the Pargu part. And in the rear here, I did have to do a little bit of sanding to get this to fit. So this part right here wraps around the gearbox, and as it presently sits, if you like screw these 4 screws into the front gearbox and then these 3 in, you kind of have to bend this around to get the rear part of this upper deck to mount effectively around the gearbox. But then all you really have to do is just take some 100 grit sandpaper and sand this part here from the inside. Just go a little bit at a time until you can get it to fit. Fits perfectly fine now, so no problems there. These are both the upper and lower deck 2mm carbon fiber. The front and rear shock towers are 3mm carbon fiber, and they do fit quite nicely. Very pretty, very shiny. For the rear shock tower though, one thing to note, and again this is for the Fiberlight part, it's a thicker shock tower than what the original shock tower was. So this rear plastic mounting bit here is new. This is the original part. They're the same exact part. But what you would have to do to fit the 3mm tower is to, let's see if I can get it in the light here. There we go. This U-shaped bit here, that bottom surface right there, you'd have to grind that out because the spacing between that and the rear sort of the back piece here, that's where you would fit the shock tower, and that can only fit a 2mm shock tower. So if you're going to fit a 3mm one, you just got to grind this part out and it should fit just fine. So that's what I did on this. Okay, the Pargu part is more like a 2mm part for the front and rear shock towers, so they would fit without any problems. So these are the front and rear shock towers from Pargu. So these are very nice parts. I do like them. I just ultimately chose to go with the carbon fiber pieces because that's more along the lines of what the original chassis was. So maybe in time I'll try to put this on my Avanti because it does have a longer wheelbase. So I'd be interested to see, you know, how that handles. But to put this upper and lower deck on the Avanti is not quite so straightforward because the entire rear suspension is different. The rear shock tower mounts at a different point. On the Avanti, it mounts about here. For this, you need a separate part and a different shock tower, and it mounts back here. In the Egress, the rear shocks mount on the back of the rear arms or the rear trailing arms. In the Avanti, they mount kind of somewhere in the middle. So you need to basically take the Avanti and turn it into an Egress, at least for the rear, if you wanted to use this kind of an upper deck, or rather this kind of an upper and lower deck for the Avanti. Okay, but maybe I'll try that out at some point. What else do I want to note here? So you may notice here the center drive shaft is a carbon fiber drive shaft, which is not what you would have on an original Egress. So if you go on eBay and you look around, you can find Tamiya 53244. It's their TGX carbon prop shaft. Okay, it is the perfect length to fit the Egress. The only thing you have to do is the end pieces, the metal end pieces that plug into these out drives here, you have to shave them a bit. So let's see, I don't have a good way of showing this. Actually, let me see if I could just illustrate it here. Just a moment. Let's see, we go there. Nope. Here. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, well, never mind. The metal piece here that plugs in to this out drive, it's sort of a flat metal plate, right? And that flat part is a little bit too wide for this piece as is. So you just take the edges of that with a Dremel and you grind it down just a little bit and they will slot right in, no problem, okay? So if you want a nice carbon fiber drive shaft, you can use the TGX carbon fiber prop shaft here. Should fit with just a small amount of modification. This is not my original idea. I actually found someone else had done this on the internet, so I kind of stole their idea because I thought it was very nice. So I adapted it to this. That's pretty much it for now. I would also note that I did not use any CA along the sides of this these carbon fiber chassis, because one thing that happens when you use CA to seal the sides is that the vapor leaves some white residue along the sides. And you can wipe that off without a problem, but just handling the chassis while you're doing that, you can leave some fingerprints and things. So if you're going racing, it's not an issue, but if this is just going to be a shelf queen, I'd rather just not use any CA here, just to keep the chassis as clean as possible. Okay. I will eventually get the turnbuckles for this and mount them. So from here to here, and of course from here to the steering linkage. Yeah, so that's it for now. I'll finish up the rear suspension here and make another video.